Decentralized Media Revolution with Yev Muchnik from Launch Legal and Zack Guzman from Trustless Media.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining. My name is Yev Muchnik. I am a corporate and securities attorney based out of Denver. We have a boutique firm called Launch Legal, and we have been servicing clients in the Web3 space since 2016. Our focus is really non-traditional shared ownership structures like DAO cooperatives, and then also trying to find like a happy and compliant medium with fundraising and non-traditional capital structures.
Yeah, and I'm one of Yev's clients, I should say, because we partner with them to launch Coinage and Trustless Media, my company, which is for the first time, I think, I'd like to say, Yev's up here so I can say, legally, compliantly growing community-owned media between creators and their fans to unleash the network effects of what we're all here to talk about, what Web3 is all about, what crypto, I think, is all about. And I've been covering it. I was at CNBC and Yahoo Finance as an anchor and quit to dive into this because I saw everyone having fun with NFTs and realizing the power that is here and now building in the media space. So excited to chat about why we work together and build this as something that now the co-founder of Netflix is also backing. So I think we're up to some pretty cool stuff. I will shill hard, but it's legally and compliant is what I will say.
So you all are members. If you apply to attend the event for free, you're all members of a DAO cooperative as well called Spork DAO. And it's structured very similarly to coinage. The governance structure is decentralized. It's all about member contribution and member inputs. So you receive Spork in exchange for your contributions as a Spork DAO member. And similarly to Coinage Co-op, which I'll let Zack dive into a little bit more on the economic structure.
Yeah, I mean, just backing up, right? I think, there are a bunch of, we were just talking on a panel this morning about DAOs and the power of community in Web3. It's really hard to just do it compliantly and legally and not have to worry about some of these concerns that I think, Coinbase is over there. They know some of the concerns. But I think, basically from a media perspective, everyone understands that media is broken. I think that's fair to say. Elon Musk tweets about it all the time. We're seeing publishers under pressure. We're seeing journalists laid off. That's my background. But there are really interesting ways to now monetize creativity online, and DAOs have been doing that for, longer than 5 years. And co-ops are essentially just legal DAOs. And so, I don't know, it was really cool to launch Coinage last year with the ability for NFT holders to mint and legally co-own what is now one of the fastest growing media outlets in Web3. So that's kind of like where the structure came from. And it's not just Coinage. Obviously, there's a bunch of DAOs out there now as Colorado cooperatives doing this to, again, we'll get into, legally distribute patronage distributions to our network.
Also known as dividends.
Also known as dividends, layman speak. But yeah, no, it's a really cool model. And like I said, I think us at Trustless, Coinage is the first one. We're now expanding with Best Dish Ever, which is a show in the food space with some very famous top chef creators. And, no show can start from scratch. And I think crypto and Web3 is very good at solving the cold start problem. And Coinage is living proof of that, which went from literally 0 subscribers and 0 people watching to 2 million views off of our big first debut episode. And the people who minted to watch that content now are being rewarded, and they didn't even have to pay for it. It was free, which we'll get into, I guess, later on.
Yeah, I mean, DAOs are very much about network effects. It's about community coordination and collaboration. And so when you see the power of that amplified, the ability to coordinate around a particular interest group or around kind of governance or even meta-governance more broadly, there's a lot of powerful things that can happen, and things that are not necessarily centralized, top-down, extractive, that are just kind of being built and extracted for the benefit of shareholders, but it's really for the benefit of those contributors.
Yeah, we were talking about this. I think there's huge network effects that are lost when you look at something just as an investment, right? I mean, there are plenty of ways to securitize things. I think in the space it's very hot right now to talk about, okay, we're tokenizing this or tokenizing that. And there have been attempts in the creator space to basically sell securities attached to athletes and their future incomes and things like that. But what is not unlocked, and what I think DAOs and Web3 is really good at, is the network effects of shared passions. And so, you think about Web2 and the rise of influencers, you're following them because you like the influencer, but you also like the content. So you have the network effects of a community, even though it doesn't look that way. You have essentially a community built around a shared passion in a content niche. So, the way I describe what we're building is kind of like a mix of Kickstarter, Patreon, and verifiable on-chain co-ownership. So our NFTs are actually tickets into membership and co-owning the brand itself. And we've seen our NFTs rise in price, which makes sense the larger our audience grows. Because if you think about media, traditionally you've been selling ads. It's a terrible model, by the way. The Web2 media model is grow an audience and monetize it by selling ads against that audience. It's the worst product. No one likes ads. But when you start to monetize the network effects of growing with your fans, what we've actually just announced at Coinage is we actually are now running our own validators. So people can read the content, learn about crypto, and then if they want, they can stake with us, and those rewards go back to the DAO co-op, which helps fuel our content. So it's, again, the network effects of how you build these things. It unlocks different monetization strategies and aligns interests in a way that lets a community come together around content that previously was not really possible in Web 2.
Zack, can you speak more about the composition of your membership and who actually interacts with the co-op? And whether there was kind of a hump that they had to overcome in terms of all of the Web3 parlance with, not just with co-ops and DAO co-ops, but with NFTs and tokens, and how that's worked out for you.
Yeah, I think crypto and Web3 specifically right now is at a very interesting inflection point when it comes to what do we want to live on the front end and what do we want to be easy. And it's a very interesting thing to watch as a bunch of investors normally are putting money onto chain, so they very much want it front and forward. But from a user perspective, sometimes those complexities are very hard to onboard anyone. We're at ETHDenver, I don't need to tell anybody this. But there are a lot of exciting account abstraction things happening now. We started Coinage, we didn't need to worry about those because it's a community of people who love crypto and want to learn more and co-own, again, a media outlet, and influence the guests we have on the show, the content we put out, and pitch anything that they really think we should be covering. But for future media brands, it might not be that you have a large community of crypto native users. So for Best Dish Ever, our second show in the food space, we're abstracting all of that away. And what I think is really cool about cooperatives and DAOs is that, as a co-op, it's not new. Everyone understands what REI is. You go there, you shop, and you get a dividend at the end of the year if you're an active contributor. And, you can abstract away the crypto piece of that, but the coolest bits of Web3 are aligned interests and the ability for people to contribute what they want to contribute and, again, enjoying the upside of where it goes. And so for Best Dish Ever, which is we're dropping basically in a couple weeks, so you guys are all hearing about it first, and thank you for being here, by the way. If you are here, speak to me afterwards, and we'll let you own Coinage at a heavy discount. But I mean, the structure of it, Yev, is mostly just you use the bits that people actually want, which is, exclusives, to co-own something with the creator that they respect and enjoy and think will be, bigger in the future. And everyone thinks about speculation as a bad thing in crypto, but I think it's really strong signal. You might follow someone on Instagram, but you want to grow with them. You don't just want to be a passive simp. You don't want to just subscribe, but you want to grow with the creator. And I think Web3 is enabling a more intimate way to grow media online and co-own it, which has never been possible before. So finally, we're kind of monetizing the network effects around that and, again, aligning interests on the internet, which there are so many. I mean, this is just one example, but there are a lot of really exciting projects right now. And it's fun to see people realize on the internet you can actually co-own things now.
You can, and you can do it in a legally compliant way where you're not just considered a general partnership and you're liable for the acts of other members in your general partnership. So if you are running a DAO and it's unwrapped or it doesn't have a legal entity that backs it, then you sort of default to this general partnership status. And I think a lot of DAOs have been in the search for the right kind of entity choice, and whether that's to wrap their whole DAO or portions of their DAO or to silo out different operations and things like that. The co-op structure, the LCA structure, is just a really flexible framework that works really well for these DAO structures. So you can have on-chain governance, you can submit proposals, you can tokenize patronage units, you can tokenize other things within your DAO, whatever makes sense for you. And you have this beautiful securities exemption that lives in the Colorado Securities Statute for DAO membership interests. And I think that that's something that more and more people are finding out about and trying to stretch, but really it's tied to the inputs and outputs that you put into this co-op and this DAO. So it's run very much like an investment club or any other thing where you're actually contributing your efforts. And so from a securities law perspective, you have this sort of shield, and you don't need to register those securities.
You're giving away our secret sauce, Yev, which I enjoy and respect because it is kind of why I quit my job. Like it was a dream job. My life goal was to be on TV and host a show and interview celebrities, and I did. I got to do it, and it was great. But something clicked in the way that media has a bunch of problems. And again, Web3 finally enables community co-ownership online, and the value of content, which is historically the worst part about media, is there is no way to really monetize content outside of, again, selling ads. But I wouldn't have quit the job and started this if it weren't for, okay, this is a compliant way to actually deliver on real co-ownership, not just speculation of I want to mint this NFT or I want to buy this collectible and flip it, but really build community that can build together. And there are a bunch of silly examples. Like for me personally, I saw a Constitution DAO, and it was people on the internet wanted to buy a copy of the Constitution. They pooled $45 million in like a few hours, and then went and tried to do it. And it was like, wow, that is the power of what DAOs can do. But what could happen if you actually build over a shared mission? And so, I don't know, in media, again, you have a very passionate reader or a very passionate viewer, but there's no energy that you're tapping into other than, okay, you're a static viewer of our stuff. But if you break down the wall between a content creator and their audience and build together, there are huge network effects that are lost and left on the table. And so, I don't know, to your point, the wrapper of all of this, it's a secret sauce because, yes, there's a securities exemption and very much you need to build it properly. But I think it's again, enabling something that wouldn't be possible. And we at Coinage have done some weird experiments. I built my shitty New York City apartments in the metaverse, and now our DAO co-op co-owns that asset. And we can flip that if we want, we can sell it, I don't know. But like all of that's in a wrapper, and it's extremely scalable. So I think it's fascinating to hear the co-founder of Netflix, again, as one of our backers, talk about, you can't build a streaming platform from scratch. But this is scalable in a way, and our company, Trustless Media, is working with creators to, again, copy this model because it is really powerful. Not just do it for coinage, but now in the food space, you could do it in politics and sports, bring together hosts, let their fans co-own it, and just drive the flywheel and do it legally.
Absolutely. So join Coinage Co-op and stay tuned.
There's a lot of different things to come. As I said, Best Dish Ever is in the food space. We have hosts from Top Chef who are going to be launching that. And there are a lot of other interesting, decentralized media projects right now. So I would shout them out as well. Mad Realities is kind of another project I saw and why I wanted to build in the space because, they were building on chain. And again, it's just really cool now to see the mainstreamification of, we partnered with Base. We built our NFTs on Base, a trial pass, so you can just mint and unlock the content. And then slowly, as people have touched Coinage and realize what we're doing, join to become co-op members too. So it's just,
A question comes to mind. So again, going back to your membership, as you scale, as you grow, as you have these that you tap into these like beautiful ripple network effects, how do you maintain kind of the ethos of what you've started to build out in terms of like what you're building into your governance structure? And
this is going to sound extremely corny. I interviewed Pitbull one time, Mr. 305, Mr. Worldwide. Some of you may know him as Mr. Worldwide. Mr. Worldwide, shout out, Mr. Where's the air horn? We need an air horn. Anyways, Pitbull was like, money can buy happiness. You just got to give it away. And it's a very corny line, but Pitbull said it, so it was cooler than when I just said it. But it's true, and I think a creator just wants to really have that feeling with their fans. Like, if you ask any kind of like, I think, creator. They're not doing it for, oh, I want to make a bunch of money. They're like, they want to create something. And so I think all we are doing, really, Trustless Media as a company, is unlocking that piece and letting them build with their existing fan base. And so, media has evolved a bunch. Just Netflix is not DVDs in the mail, and now it's streaming. But I think, if you think about the evolution of media from Web 2 and putting content online and the rise of influencers and Instagram and TikTok to now what Web 3 does, when you can actually have ownership and everything on chain, and if you actually have a wrapper and you have an entity that can have all the money go into an entity, you can be sustainable and you can set up these alignments. So coinage, through the validator deal I talked about earlier, media companies are not supposed to be profitable after a year. Like, that's not supposed to happen. But when you apply the network effects, coinage is now there, basically. So, like, again, we were talking about Colorado co-ops and being able to distribute dividends to members. There's a bit of a race right now for the ones that exist and the ones that you've worked on to actually do it. We've promised, okay, we set this legal structure up so we can distribute, can I say dividends? Rewards.
Patronage distribution.
To our members. And so, like, I'm excited because we're getting there. I don't want to promise anything right now, but it's like, it's set up in a way that is actually functionally working. And like, I had the luxury of raising $3 million before to where, all right, let's set this up. Coinage is separate. And basically, Trustless has subsidized the creation of the first community-owned show, and no one really knows that. But coinage has never even touched any of the money that's come in through our mints because it's just waiting to, have the community. And now we have more than 6,500 NFT holders, and the NFT is up 200%, and everything's functionally working. And now we've done it in crypto news. We're going to be doing it in the food space and can be doing it in any content niche. So right now, I think it's exciting to just promise something, deliver it, and then see what happens when it's out there and how it gets better. But to your question on like decentralizing it, I think that that's a huge problem in our space. I interviewed SBF, I interviewed Do Kwon. If there are parallels in those, it's that sometimes hubris and like building something with unchecked power is maybe not a good thing. And weirdly, the DAO model and the way that it's set up is like, it checks founders in a way that if you actually set it up properly and you have governance that's correct, the members can check that. And I think that's a super,
checks and balances,
it's an important piece of setting up DAO structure correctly.
So if you were to give advice to other emerging DAO media startups or just DAO startups in terms of raising capital, how would you kind of comment on anything about structure potentially and like unique structures as they relate to the co-op model, which has limitations on bringing in outside investors and returns and governance? And then also the final question is, and we only have 2 minutes, but if Netflix was to decentralize, how would you see that happening?
Yeah, Killer Whales is another example of like what was trending on crypto Twitter for a little bit. It was the attempt to decentralize a show and you'd buy a token. I don't know exactly what their model was, but Coinage started very similar, just mint a token and unlock our content. But I think, in terms of decentralizing these things, that has been historically not great. If you don't have an entity, there's really no way to really start to raise in a legal way. But for Trustless, it's a startup that takes a position in these brands as they start. So Trustless owns half of Coinage. The other half is legitimately to be owned by our DAO membership, so mint an NFT and own a piece of Coinage. And then Trustless can scale that way by making bets, certain bets, and increasingly, it can become a platform. So to your question on Netflix, it's very interesting to think about. You can't start a streaming platform from scratch, but if you start with certain bets in certain niches with creators who want to build with their fans, you can slowly over time start to build up a platform that has all of this content living on it. So that's kind of where Trustless is focused. But again, everything in media, you can boil it down. You can do all kinds of crazy things, but media is historically only as powerful as creators can be, and unleashing them to the world in a way that they can monetize, not have to worry about not getting paid or getting fired. Like, journalism is on fire right now because they cannot monetize trust. And it's very hard to monetize trust, but crypto is built for that. Like, Web3 is built for that. And so it's I don't know, I'm obviously very passionate about this, but if anyone wants to join anything that we're building, you can speak to me after the show and I'll give you a discount on joining Coinage, or stay tuned for Best Dish Ever coming out in a couple weeks.
Thanks so much, Zach. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining
Yev.
us.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
and thank you, everybody.